Good evening, traveler. You've wandered into myth-taken dreams, a place where timelines tangle, truths wobble, and bedtime stories rewrite history just enough to make it magical. Each tale unfolds from a library that never existed, where historians whisper with poets and facts arrive fashionably late. Tonight, we unspool another tale from the flickering archive because bedtime deserves a version of history to pique the imagination. So fluff your pillow, turn down the logic, and lean into the lore. Once upon a time, in the deep, dark, damp corners of the world, there was a place called Before. It was a time so old that even the stones were still figuring out what to do with themselves. The earth was a bit of a muddle. There was water, there were rocks, and then there were things. Not much to look at, really. Imagine a soup with some blobs floating about. You couldn't really tell which ones were vegetables and which ones were the spoon. Now, this place Before had a peculiar problem. It wasn't quite alive in the way we think about it. It was like the party was just beginning, but no one had figured out how to have fun yet. There were no animals, no plants, just a lot of small, squishy things that didn't do much except, well, squish. They might have been having a fine time in their own way, but they didn't have legs or eyes or brains to properly enjoy it. Then, one day, quite unexpectedly, everything changed. Like a spark on a pile of fireworks that you didn't even know were there, things started to get interesting. The universe, as it is wont to do when it's feeling particularly cheeky, decided it was time for a show. A big show. Something called the Cambrian Explosion. It was really less of an explosion and more of a sudden burst of ideas, like 1,000 artists deciding that maybe legs should be a thing at the same time. Now imagine this. One moment the sea was full of bored blobs and squishy squiggles, and the next moment, boom. There were creatures everywhere. And not just any creatures, some had eyes, some had teeth, and some even had legs. Not just legs, but good legs, the kind that could go places. And, of course, because this was all happening in the sea, it was a little like a mad rush at a jellyfish-shaped amusement park with no rules and only one ride. Will it eat you? There were trilobites, scuttling about like little armored bugs on a mission to find something interesting to look at. And there were creatures with spike-covered backs and other weird designs, all going, "Is this what I look like now? Cool." Some had jaws, which was a new idea at the time, and let's just say the arrival of jaws was like the invention of pizza. You can eat things now. In fact, some creatures got so enthusiastic about eating, they started eating everything. There were some species that had a taste for experimentation, trying out new ways of becoming dinner. Some of them even got the idea to become dinner for other creatures, which, while somewhat rude, was also, oddly, the beginning of the food chain. But it wasn't all carnage. Oh no, there were plenty of peaceful sorts too. Some creatures decided, well, let's just float around and see what happens. Maybe I'll invent a fin. Others tried out the whole swimming in circles technique, which was quite fun, though a bit dizzying. Some took to the idea of having shells, just in case anything tried to eat them. It was like a big fashion show, except instead of hats, they had armor. And as this party continued, all sorts of bizarre creatures emerged, each one thinking, now this is how you do life. Some of them became ancestors of the animals we see today, while others, well, they just sort of disappeared into the sea, never to be heard from again. Probably because they were too busy trying to figure out how to use their new jaws to chew on things. So, to sum it up, the Cambrian explosion wasn't an explosion in the usual sense. No fireworks, no loud noises, no smoke. It was a burst of creativity, a time when every creature was trying out something new, like a giant let's see what happens experiment. And from that glorious burst of weirdness came all the wonderful, bizarre creatures that eventually wandered up onto land, ate some plants, and started talking about the weather. And that, dear reader, is how the Cambrian explosion turned the dull, blob-filled seas into a bubbling cauldron of life and legs. And even though it was a long time ago, the spirit of that wild creativity, that willingness to try things out and see if it works, still hangs about today, making sure that even now the world is full of creatures who are all saying, well, I could be something boring, or I could grow wings. The end, or rather the beginning, again.